Fabulous. Good morning, everybody. We're just going to let people join the session, but welcome to you all. Some familiar faces. I know we're not on a meeting today, so I can't actually see people, but I do know there are familiar faces that have registered. So welcome to you. And this is obviously an open meeting as well. It's not just for members of the collective. So welcome to others that might be joining us for the first time as well. So we'll just give a couple of minutes, not even a couple of minutes, a moment for people to come in and just get in and settled, and then we will kick off. So yeah, welcome to people on a sunny, is it sunny? A bright, I think it's going to be raining morning. It's great to have so many registered here today as the numbers tick up there. So by way of quick introduction, before I hand across to Hannah, my name's Sue Anstis. I'm the co-founder of the Women's Sport Collective along with Kate Hannon. And yeah, delighted to have Hannah working and supporting us. So Sporting Insights have actually supported us since the very beginning of the Women's Sport Collective in our undertaking our member survey for us. And then this piece of research, more detailed research that Hannah's going to talk about today. But we're incredibly grateful as a fearless women organisation, but also as Women's Sport Collective to have Sporting Insights support on this. Before I pass to Hannah, I'm just going to quickly, a super quick reminder of what's coming up in the next couple of months or so. We have got 3 more networking meetings booked in, the online networking meetings. So April 13th, May the 10th and June the 6th. So do register for those if you haven't already. And if I know sometimes people are a bit wary of coming along to those. Super informal, really relaxed, fantastic way just to meet new people, no pressure at all. So do register for those. They're in the first link on the website of the the LinkedIn group. They're the very first post. So all the registration details are there, and they'll also be sent out to you in the newsletter, which I think is going out at the end of this week, if not the beginning of next week. So you'll have registrations for the networking calls. And also we've got 5 more webinars coming up. The 2 of them that are, I think, already in the LinkedIn group. And the next up is visual storytelling, and that's on April 26th. And that's Juliet Parkin, who's a former BBC presenter, who's going to talk about creating content, video, and engaging content for your audiences. So yeah, that's April the 26th, 1 to 2. So do have a look, say, the LinkedIn group and register for those. So I've done my little preamble. That's covered a couple of minutes. I'm going to pass across to Hannah. And I would ask, please do by all means, use the chat function as we're going through, just to introduce yourself, say where you're calling from today, just kind of keeps building that networking side. And please use the chat or the Q&A to pop in any questions that you might have for Hannah, and we will take those all at the end. Really like to make this interactive if we can do. So I hope that's all good with everybody, and I'm going to pass across. So welcome, Hannah. Thank you so much both for undertaking the research and for delivering this webinar to us as well.
Oh, thank you, Sue, and thank you for inviting me to deliver the session, and thank you everyone for joining us so early on a Thursday morning. Although I can't see your lovely faces, it's lovely to know that you're all there. So as Sue said, we're excited to share this research. It has been out a while. We launched it back in kind of February, but we've had quite a lot of interest from people across the industry. So it's great to kind of continue the conversations and share it wider across the industry. So the research itself, the survey was run back in October last year, and it was promoted with the Women's Sport Collective and across the wider sports industry. We did target just females. It was unashamedly kind of focused on the voice of women working in sport, but we had over 860 women across the industry take part. So from media to development, from entry-level women to CEOs. The aim is to make it a regular study so we can keep track of the key stats that we find, but this first one is almost a kind of a yardstick or benchmark of where the industry is at. So today's session, so what we're just going to focus on briefly is we'll just look at the current situation and where we're at and the need to improve gender equality in the industry. We'll tackle the highs and lows of the experiences of women working in sport, and then the second half of the session will focus on actions both for the industry and for women working in the industry and those looking to enter sport. There are, as Sue said, some interactive moments in the session. So there's a poll and a chance for you to share your thoughts on the insights. So please come forward in the chat with your thoughts, because we'd love to hear what your thoughts are. So in terms of the situation, kind of the key findings we found. So kind of as a situation as it stands is that for women, sport is a rewarding career, but it's a challenging industry to work in. And for those women who are in the industry, less than 1% of them felt that there was gender equality across the industry. And when we looked at the average score given by women working in sport for gender equality, the score was 4.63 out of 10. And what this meant for women who were working in the industry, over 90% of them both faced barriers when they were entering the industry and when they were trying to develop their career working in sport. So it really backs up that, you know, sport for women at the moment feels like a challenging industry to break into and to work in. And when we look at what this translates in terms of the workforce and its kind of retention and recruitment, well, 4 in 10 women working in sport love it and have no plans to leave, which is fantastic. There's a large group, 5 in 10, who are going to see what the future holds. So potentially could stay for many years or could move if a better option became available. And sadly, 1 in 10 are planning to leave, and some of the reasons why will become shared in the research. So what this tells us is that there is work to be done around gender equality within the industry. And what we would like to do is that work to change the narrative from these two. So we would like less women to be saying, you know, they feel worn down, frustrated by the inequalities, and that there's lots of talk, but no real action. And we want to change that narrative to more women saying it's an incredibly rewarding career, lots of opportunities to branch out to different areas within the business. So this research is available as a free report for anyone who would like to read it in more detail or share it with their colleagues. It's available from our website under the report section. So today's session will pull out the key findings and the key recommendations, but if you'd like the report, it is available for free. So we're going to start with the positives. So for many of the women working in sport, there was a strong feeling that actually working in sport is an empowering and positive experience. And women were kind of driven to work in sport because of their passion and their love of the purpose of what sport does for society and culture. So the workout that we can see here were the most common positive words. So empowering was the strongest, and then also that women felt proud and privileged to work in sport. And of those that were surveyed, over half of them were motivated to work in sport because they wanted to make a difference. And we've got that 4 in 10 who absolutely love the industry and don't have any plans to leave. So there are, whilst this report and this presentation does highlight a lot of the challenges, because those are the things we can tackle, it's really important to recognise that actually there are a lot of positives for women working in sport. And actually, if we can overcome and help more women overcome some of these challenges, and hopefully more women will experience these highs working in the sports sector. So onto the lows. So there are a number of lows that are reported with women entering the industry and working industry. And I think some of the feedback that we've had so far is that I suppose the insights that came out aren't a surprise, so the reasons or the challenges, but it was the degree to which people were experiencing them that were a surprise. So we're going to share those reports, those key findings in a kind of interactive quiz style, which I'm going to attempt to manage as I present. So there's 5 questions, they're all multiple choice. And then at the end of them, I would like to maybe open the floor either through the chat or the Q&A, just to hear people's thoughts on which of the findings were most surprising or most reassuring. So please keep that in mind as we're going through the stats. So the first one is this, but let me just get the poll up, bear with me. Okay, so we've got question number 1. What percentage of women felt that the sports industry was biased towards men? So we got 0%, 33, 66, and 100%. Cool. Excellent, lots of responses coming in. Well, I think there looks like there's a clear favourite, so just wait for a few more people. Okay, let's enter there. Okay, so most people said 66% of the 66% was the most common answer. You just stop that. Cool. Which actually the answer was a third. So a third of women who took part in the research felt that the industry was biased towards men, and that's shown on this chart with the light blue chart bars to the left. This chart shows, so the question that women were asked were, as a woman working in sport, where do you feel the industry is for gender equality right now? And to the left is massively biased towards men, and to the right is gender equality. So we can see that a third of the respondents were scoring over on that left-hand side. But one of the more worrying stats, which is one of the ones in our kind of opening slide, is on the right-hand side, that green area, where actually it's just less than 1% of women felt that there was gender equality in the sector. And that's obviously women across all areas of the industry. So that is equally worrying end of the scale. But we do have the blue sections in the middle. So we've got quite a few people who are in that neutral area, and you know, positive in that there are some women there who are experiencing gender equality. And when we average that out, you can see that top right. So the average score is 4.63 out of 10. So I suppose to paint the picture, it's not a terrible situation. There are women in there who are having an okay experience, with the score being average of 4.63, but however, there is definitely room for improvement across the industry to improve that score and improve the scores on this chart overall. Okay, next question is, what percentage of women believe they are paid less than men for the same work? Let me just launch the poll. Bear with me. Sorry, I can't, just working out how to launch it. The last one was easier. Here we go. There we go. So hopefully you can all see that. Yes, answers coming in. So what percentage of women believe they are paid less than men for the same work? Oh, excellent. Responses coming in. Perfect. Oh, a bit more even this one. Let me end share. Okay, so these were our responses. So quite close, between 75% and 50%, and then some saying 23%. So let's have a look to see what we found. So we actually found in this research, so it's just over half of women felt that they were paid less than men for the same work. So low pay was actually quite a common theme throughout the research, highlighted by women, and kind of concerns that were raised were actually the salaries within the sports sector being lower than the salaries for similar roles in other corporate environments. And for many women, that was a barrier to entering and also staying within the sports industry. And actually 61% also stated that low pay was actually the reason for their barrier for entering, and it was the most common barrier for women entering the sector. But what I think is worth bearing in mind that actually low pay is potentially more of a sector-wide issue. It could be something that men and women experience. Obviously, this research only focused on women's experiences, so we haven't got that ability to compare whether for men low pay was a barrier to entering or staying in the industry. But what this research does find is that stat that 51% of women do believe that they're paid less than men for the same work. And that does indicate that there could be a gender pay gap within the sector. Okay, so question number 3 is a true or false question. Let me just share the poll. Okay, so true or false? Male gatekeepers or intimidating men working in the industry were less of a barrier for women entering the industry in the last 5 years compared to those who entered more than 10 years ago. So true or false? Oh, so responses are coming in. Fab. And then did there. Okay, so we got 77% felt that this was true. Let's see what we found. Actually, what we found is that actually men have continued to be a barrier. And actually, what we found from the Women Are research is that there wasn't a difference. So the bar chart on the left, the two charts show the percentage of women who said male gatekeepers or intimidating men in the industry were a barrier to their entry. So the blue is women who entered more than 10 years ago, and the green is women who entered less than 5 years ago. And actually, what we can see with the percentages were the same. So what we were seeing was that actually the situation has not improved for women who have entered the industry more recently. And then when we delved into the challenges of male gatekeepers, we found that actually 37% of women said that male gatekeepers restrict their career progression. And there's a couple of comments there of women, their kind of real life experiences of actually the kind of recruiters' mates kind of culture being a barrier to themselves. I think it's important to point out on this slide that whilst we are sharing and talking about the male gatekeepers, there was some women who did experience female gatekeepers. The percent was much lower. It was around about 7 or 8%. So there were some incidences of women potentially reaching high level roles and in a way kind of taking away that ladder for other women to follow them up or go past them. So that was an issue as well. However, it was the male gatekeepers that were more of an issue for women working in sport. Okay, next question. Let me just launch the poll. Okay, so what percentage of women admitted that the fear of saying no or turning down opportunities that men were taking means they compromise on their own work-life boundaries? Oh, so responses coming in. Okay, right, seems to have paused, and we do have a consensus, so let's share this. So results from the audience say that 51% think that it's 75% are experiencing this, with 31% thinking that 50% are. So what we found was that it was just more than half of women are feeling that they need to compromise on their work-life boundaries. So 55% of women admitted to fear of saying no and turning down opportunities. So for a lot of women from this research, we found that women felt that the structure and the culture of the sports sector didn't flex enough with them to meet the needs of their lifestyle, whether that's their caring responsibilities or just the general kind of day-to-day needs of their lifestyle. And that kind of didn't really support their career development and their employment. And we found that 48% of women said that lack of opportunities was a barrier for them, and it was 28% said the lack of flexibility was a challenge. And for some women in the research, actually these issues and this culture actually meant that they were finding there were adverse effects on their work-life balance. And there's one quote here from one lady who was talking about feeling worn down and frustrated, lots of talk but no action, and actually feeling the need to take their skills and energy, their passion experience somewhere else, because they do have that desire to make a difference, and feeling that, you know, working within sport, it was almost felt like they were doing their job with one hand tied behind their back constantly, which is not a story that we would like to hear often working in sport. So last poll is another true or false. Let me just launch the poll. Oh, hang on. No, there it is. Sorry. Okay. So more than half of women are worried about imposter syndrome when progressing their career. True or false? Oh, lots of responses coming in. Okay, end the poll there. So we got 95% of people do believe it's true. Which is correct. So we had 6 in 10 women were worried about imposter syndrome when progressing their career. But what was interesting here that, yes, there was worries about imposter syndrome progressing their career, but actually when we looked at their confidence to do their current role, 9 in 10 felt confident that they had the skills to do their job well. So the insight that we found within the research is it's not that women aren't confident to work in sport, it's that their confidence to progress and move roles, that's where the imposter syndrome was a challenge for women working in sport. And then we've got a few examples here of how women have helped have managed to overcome the barrier of imposter syndrome. So for many women, it was, the fact that they were asked to take control of a project helped them to realize that they were capable to do so. And for some women, it was actually kind of getting on and carrying on and doing the work, which helped to improve their confidence and overcome their imposter syndrome. And I know the Women's Sport Collective recently ran a workshop on this, and I'm sure there were many more examples of ways to overcome that than these few. So I just want to pause there and get your thoughts ideally in the chat. I think is probably the best place. Are there any of these stats here that you think were surprising, or any that are reassuring that we've shared? So please pop your comments in the chat. So Emily's put a comment in there. So often women believe in their own abilities, but their perception is that others do not believe in them. This is what we've learned through coaching, self-efficacy work. Yeah, great. Thank you, Emily. Totally. It's that constant thought of what other people think that could stop women, whether it's even applying for the role or sharing I suppose the value that they add in the interviews, or putting themselves forward for promotions in work. Anyone else? Any thoughts of stats that are surprising to you? Okay, some in here. So we've got Lauren. It was interesting to see that male gatekeepers and research and how dial hasn't moved on the 10-year perception. One, yep, Lauren, I did a presentation with a workplace, and the 10-year change one with male gatekeepers. Again, everyone thought it had improved. That's always one that kind of picks people up. Marge, given that only a third felt that the industry was biased, the answers to the other questions give much higher percentages. Oh, Sue, still shocked that more than 50% of women in sport feel they're paid less than men for the same work. And Gemma, real shame to see that there's been no difference around the male gatekeepers. Yeah. And Sandy as well. I agree. Difficult barriers to overcome. Do we know the real pay gap stats? No, excellent question, Maya. We don't have that information. Would be a really interesting research project to look at. Would be a difficult and challenging research project to make sure we have full representation across all the different roles, different companies, obviously sport being such a broad industry, from media to development to participation to performance, and then having so many companies that are sports focused, but some that are, I suppose, multi-industry focused, where sport is just one. However, that doesn't mean it can't and shouldn't be done. So I agree that would be a really interesting piece of work. Oh, and Emily, the female gatekeepers. No, we only have that one piece of stat around, I think it was about 8% of women experienced female gatekeepers. I think one of the things we discussed a lot with Kate and Sue is this research, I suppose, was the first piece of research that we were doing as a bit of a benchmark or a temperature check to actually see what those issues are. And the more we talk to people, the more we realise that actually there's this area that could be delved into a lot more. So the male and female gatekeepers is definitely one of those areas that could be explored. And it'd be interesting to see where across the industry, whether it's certain levels or different sectors, whether it's more of an issue with men or women in the different sectors. Are there some that are more male dominated within sport itself? So yeah, Anna's put a comment in there. She had a female camera supervisor trying to get into the industry, and she was really prevented to enter rather than helping her to get into it. There were some women who said that actually some women like being the only women on the team or around the table. So that would be very interesting to explore further. Cool, right, there's lots of questions in that. I'm going to pause and move on and hope that Sue is taking note of the extra questions and we can cover them at the end. Okay. So we're going to move on to actions that the industry and employers can take. I think it's important to recognise that it's not just senior leadership who can take actions to bring around change. Yes, they may be the people involved in policy change, but a lot of the challenges that women face are the kind of culture that exists within the sports industry as a whole and within certain places of work. And that is something that everyone working in sport can have an impact on, whether that's just challenging the norms or asking for something to be changed or looked at. So it is something everyone can to help with. So I'm going to go through a few. There were 3 key areas that we found from the research. I'm going to go through those 3, but obviously there's more detail in the report itself. So the first area that we had was actually that sport needs to improve its systems. So in order to bring about real change, obviously we need to look at the systems that kind of govern the way our industry works and the culture that it creates. And systems are at the heart of this. So the 3 areas that we found on the left here, which we'll just touch on briefly. So the first one is to improve the visibility of women working across all levels of sport. So we know that we've got the Code for Sport Governance, which is looking at board level representation. We know that there's a lot of good work out there of governing bodies and organisations who are meeting the quotas set out and those that are working towards it. But what we actually found here is that stat on the top right was that 78% of women agree that seeing a diverse role models working across sport would help assist their career progression. So what this tells us is that yes, we need better representation at the top levels, boards and senior leadership, but also at the entry level. So and those kind of areas where women are entering the sector or progressing up, they need to be able to see women like them in roles that they're looking to enter into. So it's about having visibility top down, but also bottom up. And I was at the Women in Football conference last week, and there was a lady there who gave a very interesting point that actually when we hire at entry levels, we should actually be looking to hire in 2s, 3s and 4s of people from different backgrounds, be that gender, but also ethnicities as well, and really focusing on having that bottom layer of the pyramid, having gender equality there. So then it filters up into the next layers above, which I thought was a very interesting way of looking at it. The second one is looking at how we recruit and being open-minded and transparent in recruiting. So there were a number of comments from women saying that they just wanted to be able to show their talent instead of being rejected before they started. So at time of application. So whether that's kind of could be self instructed, I suppose, a lot of women not wanting to apply because they don't feel they meet all of their criteria, but also those women who do apply feeling that they're rejected before they start. whether it's hopefully not because they literally are a woman, but because of the experiences or the, I suppose, training that they haven't got, and not being able to look at their transferable skills, so their ability to learn, their passion for the role and what they could bring outside of the job description. So it's looking at what you've got on the essentials list and the desirable list, and actually as an industry, should we flip those on its head? So actually the desirable list are the transferable skills of being able to negotiate, inspire others, those types of skills, and the essentials are possibly the 5-10 years experience working in, I don't know, the sales industry. So those specific experiences, if we swap them, could we be more open-minded to who we're encouraging to apply? And then the last one is to look at the pay and working conditions. So obviously, as research found that 51% of women believe they're paid less than men for the same work. But as it was mentioned in the comments there, it'd be great to find out, is that actually true? And that is something workplaces can do within their own workplace. Doesn't need to be an industry-wide study for places of work to take action straight away. So that's the, I suppose, the recommendation from that finding. The second area, missing a chart, there it is to support women entering the industry. So it's looking at that start of women's journey into sport, and we need to think about how the perception of the culture within sport is, and what barriers that women face trying to break into that group. So the 3 areas that came out of the research were to focus on increasing the number of women and girls who positively engaged in sport. So the research found that 8 in 10 women who are working in sport do so because they're passionate about their sport. So it demonstrates the value of the positive experience, either as a fan or a participant in sport, and that impacts the workforce within sport itself. And I think this is kind of shown easiest with this chart here on the right. So if we start with the yellow circle, so if more women and girls enjoy sport, have that positive experience, that positive association, then they're more likely to apply for jobs and look to work and stay in sport in that green circle. So then once we do have a more diverse workforce, that means that sport is then better able to appeal to women and girls as participants and fans in that blue circle, which then, if it better appeals to them, there'll be more girls who will enjoy sport, and then hopefully more women and girls who will enter sport, and the kind of cycle continues. So that positivity and that good experience is really vital to the workforce, as well as I suppose attendance and viewership. So I was on the Women's Sport Trust session yesterday, and they were looking at viewers and attendances, and they were talking about the shift that they made recently from focusing marketing messages from women's sport being a worthy cause and an inspirational cause for people to work in, to attend, and they changed that narrative to looking at the excitement on the pitch, off the pitch, and they found that has actually helped to increase attendance and viewership. And I think that same can be applied here to the workforce. If we can help people have the positive experience of sport as a whole, then it will help grow our workforce. The second one was improving awareness of sport as a career for women. So we actually found that there are a number of comments about women not knowing the roles that were available in sport, and that was before they entered, and also after they've entered, not having awareness of the different types of roles that they could go into. And there's some really good work going on by a lot of different companies. You've got kind of Careers in Sport, who is looking to share that kind of information with young people at the start of their career, but it's also thinking about those young people who are working within your workforce, how you can help expose them to the different types of roles that exist, so that they can try these different areas and find where their strengths really lie and their passions lie within the sports industry, and then hopefully they'll stay within sport for longer. And then the third insight that we found was actually the need to encourage sporty and non-sporty women into the industry. So as I said, 8 in 10 women in this study were passionate about sport, which is fantastic. but is that really representative of all women within the population in terms of those who have that strong affinity with sport? And are we missing out by not having those, by having the less sporty women working in sport? So we did do a little bit of a dive into the data, and whilst the sample wasn't huge for what I'm calling the less or non-sporty women to draw robust insights, there was some kind of indicative trends that we could draw out from the study. So we saw that these women, these less sporty women who are working in sport, were motivated to enter because of company values or purpose, or their vision that matched their own personal, I suppose, values, or that they wanted to make a difference through sport themselves, or they were drawn to the personal development opportunities, or were looking for a career pivot as well. So there are things that can draw these women into the sports industry. So it's thinking about how we advertise that on the job adverts and the culture that we create to encourage women over into the sports sector. And then the third area was to support career progression of women already working in sport. So the first one that came out was male allies. So there were a lot of positive comments from women who felt the real value of men championing their skills, their strengths, and sharing their knowledge. But actually 44% said there weren't enough visible male allies at work. The other thing that came out as actually really strongly was 8 in 10 women who would like some access to mentoring support. And when we looked into the data, we can split these into 2 areas. There was formal mentoring opportunities, so women who wanted specific help with career progression, and they wanted to talk to someone who had been there and done it in the, I suppose, the area or the challenges that they're facing, so that more structured support. But then there were also a lot of there are a number of things that women were keen to receive that could be provided through informal mentoring. So there were things like helping with their well-being, broadening their network, just being someone there to talk to when they're having a particular challenge, or kind of help alleviate their feelings of imposter syndrome. And actually with 82% of women saying that they felt like being part of a large network of women, such as the Women's Sport Collective, there are ways that workplaces or organisations can help with those areas as well. So it's that mixture of formal and informal mentoring. So this slide is just a kind of a summary of actions for change that people can look to do that we kind of covered on those previous slides. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to skip ahead because I'm a bit conscious of time and I want to make sure we've got time for question and answer. So I'm not going to run through those because I think we've touched on most of them already. So last section is advice for women. So in the study, we asked women to give a piece of advice to women who are already working in the sector or looking to enter the sector themselves. So there were, I think it was about 3 key areas that I'm just going to whiz through quickly here. So the first one was around building an authentic network of meaningful connections. So one of the themes that came out of the research was actually that your network is a powerful tool no matter where you are within your career journey, whether you're just starting out or you're later in your career. And actually building those connections was something that would help women. And the first quote here is a really interesting one, because actually there was a woman in there who said, actually, this is something that we do better than men. And actually it's that taking the time to get to know everyone and building the rapport at all levels is something that has really helped her to progress in her career. And then the other pieces of feedback that came out were important about building a diverse network with people, men and women within the industry, but also looking outside of their industry to reach out to people. And it was about giving support and advice as well as taking support and advice. And I think that quote on the right shows there that actually by doing this, you then have that kind of network of people who will be there to support you throughout the different challenges and obstacles that you have during your career. The second one was one of my favorite ones. So it's that you don't need to behave like a man or men to succeed in sport. And this was some interesting kind of feedbacks in here. My favorite one being the one on the right, actually, that yes, in a male dominated sector, and there's a set culture for how things work in that area and how people behave, but actually this lady found that actually by using a different style, maybe embracing her feminine qualities, actually gave her a point of difference to stand out, and actually that was actually what some clients needed. So one of the key messages here is that, you know, as a woman, you are your best asset, and you don't need to change how you behave in sport. And actually, just because it's a different approach doesn't mean it's a wrong approach. So there were some lovely stories in there about kind of embracing the different ways of working and not copying the culture that maybe already exists within sport. This one was around the mentoring, which I briefly touched on the last point. So mentoring was seen as a highly valued development tool, but the advice from women within the report was to not only focus on formal research, but to focus on informal research, network, mentoring. So there's a couple of examples in there where kind of meeting people high up or with lots of experience in the industry and being able to kind of ask for advice. So it's about having those kind of curious conversations with different people. And the positivity in a lot of the open-ended feedback was that women were happy to have those conversations. I think it's a bit like one of the comments that was in the chat. Actually, don't feel afraid to speak out and ask women for a chat, and just to ask for those advice, because women want to have those conversations, and most women do want to help other women on their journeys. Obviously, we touched on the female gatekeepers, but there are a lot of women out there who do want to help others who are also going through the same challenges and the same journey as well. And then the last one was to focus on camaraderie with other women in sport, not competition. So there was a lot of advice from women to say to focus on collaborating and supporting with other women working in sport was really invaluable for them. And obviously we had the stat of 82% of women saying that being part of a large network of female colleagues would help their career progression. And it's that being part of an active community, it provided them with kind of experience-based advice, that sense of belonging, sense of solidarity, and that kind of ongoing inspiration through their day-to-day, but also kind of looking at their career journey as well. And then I just wanted to touch on, so that kind of touched on the key themes, but we did pull together the actual pieces of advice for women to look at. So these were the headline advice topics that came out of it, and underneath each of them were some, I suppose, more actions that women could take. So I'd encourage people to go and have a look at it. It's I've pinned it on my featured on my LinkedIn, but I know it is also available on the Fearless Women website as well. So please do go on there and take a look as well. Okay, so what's next from this research? So as we said before, so everyone working in sport does, is responsible for taking actions, whether they're small or big, to change their culture. And hopefully there's a few takeaways from this session that you can either implement yourself or speak to a manager or a senior leader in your company to see whether it's something that your place of work could look into. The other thing that we found from talking to other people is that actually the male voice is really important, and this research did focus on females, but we do need to add the male voice to that conversation, help educate them, but also understand things from their perspective, and potentially that male gatekeepers piece, but also how we can get more male allies for women in sport and women working in sport. Obviously a difficult piece of research that will be, but I think it's one that we shouldn't shy away from, and does need to, is part of the big jigsaw of improving gender equality. I've touched on measuring again, so measuring these key stats again. so we can hold the industry to account, because we do need to see change going forward, no matter how small. So we do need to keep that measurement going and keep the visibility of this research at the forefront of people's minds. And then the other key takeaway which could look at is to learn from other industries. So obviously sport, from other conversations that we found, is that people saying that sport is a bit behind maybe some of the more developed industries, and what can we learn from them to improve our gender equality, and likewise what can we learn from other countries, so sport in other countries and the women working in sport. So that's an area that could be further explored as well. Right, I'm going to stop talking and hope that Sue's gathered some questions. So it'd be great, any questions that you've got, or any general thoughts that you've got from the insights that we've shared.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Hannah. God, I've seen it before and I've seen it again, and every time it opens my mind to new things and new thoughts. And we have got some questions there. So a couple of interesting reflections. What Carol mentioned, have we thought about looking at other countries and doing a temperature check elsewhere? And I guess I would jump in for our Hannah there in terms of that. Absolutely, yes. This was almost like, as Hannah said at the beginning, a starting point for us to do and compare elsewhere. So definitely geographically, we'd like to, and we've been talking to some other partners that might, and working with the International Working Group for Women in Sport, whether we can find some more international partners to then definitely look at this geographically. And I guess a question for Hannah that I kind of know the answer to, but also interesting to explore further, is other sports, is which sports did well, whether there's a way to compare some national governing bodies or sports that might be doing this particularly well, and others that are struggling more. So I know I'm answering that for you, Hannah. Is that something that you've looked at or could do more of in the future?
I think because we said this piece of research was that kind of temperature check original benchmark for the whole industry. We didn't look into sports specifically. A lot of the over half of the sample, I think, were quite sport generic. So it's not something we looked into, but we are having conversations with some sports to see whether it's something we can do. Obviously now we have the baseline for the whole industry, so now we've got something that we can measure other sports against. We don't want to get into the situation where we pit sports against each other. We would just like sports to look at the industry as a whole, and what would be an ideal is that we would actually look at what the standard we want everyone to be at, and then sports can compare themselves to that level. But yeah, if there are any sports out there who are interested in doing something similar, it doesn't have to be exactly, well, it could be the same study repeated to compare against the sport, or we have done some smaller stuff with other sports themselves just to kind of see where they're at. So definitely open to conversations with others about doing that work.
And then thank you, Hannah. There's some fantastic points there mentioned. Well, actually really interesting point from Emily, which I have taken note of, around language, around us saying you don't have to be like men, and actually not all men behave in the same way. So we will look to rephrase how we describe that. I think we know what we mean, but just making sure we're clear on. And then also Mark's point around, could we do a follow-up survey talking to men? Is absolutely very pleased you raised that, Mark, because that's exactly one of the things we are talking about. And even when we say we're asking men, women and their advice and so on, there's a few men on this call, but that's absolutely something that we want to do more of. What do men feel about this, and what can we learn from their thoughts in terms of how we change this, whether that's around the gatekeepers or language and one of those areas too. So that is, as Hannah said, definitely something that we are kind of looking to do more, and also around diversity too. And again, as the numbers increase, so we had 860 odd this time, but as we get more numbers, to be looking also around not just gender diversity, but the breadth of diversity in the industry, and for women working in the sports industry too. I thought it was an interesting point around, I think it was Kay mentioned, does sport attract more competitive people? So therefore, are we competitive? But I personally feel that there's another analogy, isn't there? Not the queen bee, but also the woman who goes up, finds a door in the glass ceiling and then pulls the ladder up behind her and closes the door. And I never know how much of that has been created by men as a myth around women in business, or how much is because you've only had one woman in that room. That makes it harder than, as Hannah mentioned, having recruiting in twos and threes too. So I definitely think there's kind of more to be explored in that space too. Yes, so I'm scanning through and seeing if I had any other questions. Do other people have any other thoughts and questions? I know it's fantastic. People are sharing insights and awareness. We can gather some of the chat functions and share that with people too. You see, we've already got offers of people helping internationally to share the research. So that is fantastic. And I say at this stage, it's just something that Sporting Insights have very kindly, we've kind of co-created this, and they've given their time on this. So we're also out talking to potential partners that might want to fund us to do more, because we think it is really important. But if there's more that we can do in the future, it's quite hard to read questions and talk at the same time, Hannah, isn't it? It's like doing one of those tricks things as well. We just check. I've got a couple of Q&A. Oh, I have got Q&As there too. Sorry, I'm not doing my job. Sorry, Danielle's question: is there future plans in research to include men, to incorporate other sections of aspects of it? I've almost answered your question, Danielle, without realizing I was. Then gender disaggregated data is often lacking and really valuable in understanding why the issues on gender specific women in sport have included boys in a number of their recent projects on girls, and this has revealed some fascinating results. I completely agree. I think the piece for us at the moment is we've obviously had access to many women within the Women's Sport Collective and also across the industry. So absolutely, it might be that we then need to partner with some organisations and national governing bodies to get men involved too. But it is definitely something that we're looking to do more of. So I'm scanning questions. Do share any other questions in the Q&A, or I'm looking across in the chat function too. Thank you. I think I can't see many more, but hopefully it's kind of sparked a fantastic conversation around this whole area, which definitely does need more research. People saying thank you, Hannah, if you're looking there. Thank you for your time. And I think it's a broad issue, isn't it? But it's kind of so much more that can be done moving forward. And I think at least we've begun to spark that conversation. I'm just looking down to see if I can find other things too, other questions. More potential to promote it more, highlighting men. I definitely felt that as we were going through, was there more that we could do? When we said we asked women, what should we be asking men? We will be sharing this as a recording, so we'll share this across to everybody. Will receive a link for this to share it more widely too. And if I haven't got any more questions, I'm going to say thank you so much. I know people got busy days. There's leaders event this afternoon, lots happening today. But thank you so much, Hannah, and thank you to Sporting Insights again for kind of committing to this important research. And I'm going to help. We can see here it's got people thinking and talking. So sorry, I've got one more quick question coming around mentoring. I think one of the things that we're going to do as the collective is to kind of aggregate and share the different mentoring schemes that are out there. We are exploring doing more of that ourselves in the year ahead. So just from Danielle's point, it's definitely a result from the research that many women felt it would be of value. So we are definitely looking to do more in that space in the future. So thank you so much, Hannah. Thank you everybody that's joined us this morning, and we'll share a recording, and yes, look forward to meeting you at other events in the future too. Thank you so much.